So, all right, for our teenagers again, thank you. And Annabeth Rickey is their leader. She led us off. The Bible scholar George Lamsa, says that light is a symbol of truth and understanding. So this week, I was doing some research to prepare for today. But before I get to that, I want to tell you, I grew up in New England. And when I was a kid, I'd walk to school and I'd have my lunch and all my books, and usually a towel wrapped around my clothes for gym and my gym shoes. And I wasn't smart enough to put any of this in a bag, so I was carrying all of this. And on my way to school, this was a very small town. There was no such thing as anonymity in this small town. Everybody knew everybody's move. Everybody knew everybody's business. And so I'd walk to school and I'd pass these little churches that were not the church that I attended. I went to a wonderful church. It was a very good experience. And I'd pass these other churches, and there would be elderly women who were like the equal of my grandmother. In fact, they'd be out there sweeping the piazza of the church or watering the geraniums on the porch of the church, and they'd say, "Oh, good morning, Mark. Be sure to tell your grandmother I said hello." Now, you have to understand, my grandmother, as far as I was concerned, was a saint. She was the most loving, kind, giving, generous person I knew. She did not hang around with derelicts or bad people. So as I would walk to school, I would think, those people know my grandma. Grandma's a living saint. How could she be hanging out with them if they're bad? Because they don't go to the same church we do. This was good, because this was sort of the planting of seeds in my consciousness that there were many paths to God. And so when eventually I would find religious science, I was thrilled to know that Ernest Holmes, what he said he did was that he studied the different religions and traditions around the world, and he felt that there was a golden cord of truth contained in every religion, that every religion had some of the truth. So when people say to me, "Does your church teach the truth?" I say, well, yes, of course, some of it. And I think that's so about every church. Every church has a piece of the truth, but God is so big, no one church could possibly contain and hold all of it. And so in the science of mind, Ernest Holmes was very wise, I think, in his formulation of the teaching, because what he focused on was what he saw as truth that showed up in most teachings around the world. Not every teaching, of course, but there were common spiritual themes, common spiritual denominators that went across many, many religions, and that is what he focused on. Now, admittedly, he was formulating his teaching in America in the 20s, and this was largely a Judeo-Christian culture at the time. We've obviously also continued to evolve since then, but the frame of reference that Ernest had at the time was largely most people in America were Christians and Jews at that time. So I went back and I was looking at some things about light. And light for the ancient Hebrew people is a manifestation of the divine operating in a world where there is lots of darkness. Now, you know, we don't have to look far to see that there's the appearance of a lot of darkness in the world. Now, in Science of Mind, we don't believe the darkness is the ultimate reality, but boy, there certainly seems to be a lot of darkness, doesn't there? I mean, if we're just going by appearance for just this moment, there certainly seems to be a lot of darkness. I was remembering that an old practitioner, she had been a practitioner for Ernest Holmes, the founder of our church. And I had been to see her, and I was complaining about somebody or something or other. And she said to me, she said, "Well, dear, do you like everything that you do?" And I said, "Well, no." And she said, "Well, then I think that settles it, doesn't it?" I'll come back to that. And so for the ancient Hebrew people, the dawn at the dawn every morning indicated that the darkness will not last or reign forever. Now, I know when it's our darkness, when it's a situation we're dealing with, we feel like, oh my God, this is going on forever. Will this never end? Will this never clear up? Will this never get better? But you know, that's what the ancient Hebrew people knew. The dawn every day was a reminder that the light always, always overcomes the darkness, no matter how dark it gets. And so light is therefore the essence of all the gifts through which God blesses his children. So light is an energy that brings about certain effects in the world and is for humankind's benefit. It is for humankind's benefit that the light shines. So you know, in the Old Testament, it's God's will that the light and the darkness coexist in the world. Now, I don't know, do we need the darkness? You know, maybe we've evolved beyond that kind of thinking. However, the light, the important thing to remember is that the light curbs the darkness. You know, our job, it seems, is to be the one to add light to the situations that seem dark in the world. And we add the light, 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 and we say, gee, isn't it getting any better? But ultimately, the truth is that the darkness does not argue with the light. And it doesn't matter how long the darkness has been in place. That when you add the light, the darkness disappears. So the light curbs the darkness. And I think for all of us on a spiritual path here, this is our job to know that, you know what, where I find myself in situations and relationships, it's my job to be the one who brings the light. And I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, why does it always have to be me? Because you're the one who thought of it. Because you know better. Because that's what you signed up for, all of us. Really it is. Well, I don't think I signed up for it. Yes, you did. You're here. You signed up, trust me. So also from the Old Testament, that light is the source of life. That light brings order to the world. That light is the source of knowledge. That light symbolizes God's law, which is very important to us as students of the science of mind to know that the law is always in operation. So the light of truth and knowledge operates on humankind, both by imparting knowledge and also giving us guidance. You know? So in the East, that's often thought of as illumination, right? Or enlightenment. So the recipient of light becomes a light. So, you know, as the light grows in us, it becomes more our job to be a light in the world. As we wake up a little more, it becomes more our job to hold the light for other people, to love other people. You know, light in the New Testament now. The New Testament emphasizes light is a divine gift. Okay, I'm really good with that. And from the New Testament, we are to act according to the light that's imparted to us. You know, already, everybody here, the light burns brightly in. You can't pretend or slide back like it doesn't. I know, wouldn't it be nice if I could say, just for today, could I not? Just for today, could I not try to be the light of the world? Could I not be conscious? And it's like, nope, it's too late. That bus has already left the station, right? So we are to act according to the light that's imparted to us. So we all already know enough to be a little bit more of the light in the world. And so the light really is our armor against the seeming darkness. You know, so when we find ourselves in situations, what we have to come to is, what's the highest spiritual truth I know? What does God say about this? What do the teachings that I say I believe, what do they teach me for this situation? Because God's light shines to all people. So lastly, I want to share a little bit from John, the gospel writer John. John has an elaborate theology of the light. He says, God is light as in the source of light. And he also goes on in the New Testament and says that Jesus is the light of the world. So for John, true life in the light consists in keeping Jesus' commandments, especially in loving our brothers. And he says, if you hate your brother, you're still in darkness. Do not kid yourself. You know, it's interesting. In the Old Testament, the hardest practice to master in the Old Testament is tithing. I know people say, oh, I get the Old Testament. I understand the Old Testament. Yeah, okay, you've mastered the Old Testament if you're tithing, okay? And if you haven't, well, then we can just cut this conversation really short, okay? You haven't mastered the Old Testament. It's just, it's a difficult practice. Why? Because people think they're their money, okay? And this is not the money talk today. You're saved. It's not for another year, so just relax, okay? We did that in October, okay? And the hardest practice to master in the New Testament is forgiveness. Right? Why don't we love our brother? Because we don't forgive them for some transgression. So I go back to that old practitioner who said, do you like everything you do, dear? It's like, well, no. And it's like, well, then you're probably not going to like everything everybody else does either. So why don't you just make up your mind to love them anyway? Just love them anyway. How can I love them when they say such and such, or when they do this and that? How can I love them when... Because you decide to. It doesn't mean you like their behavior. It doesn't mean you condone their behavior. It means you love them anyway. Remember, you don't like everything you do you, dear? Right. Right. So, I think that this is what Science of Mind points us toward. This idea of the light is already here, and it's our job to be the best expression of the light we can be. I was doing a memorial service here in our sanctuary a while back, and there was a fellow here, and I was talking to him after the service was over. Everybody was gone, and he was one of these thrill-seeker daredevil guys. You know, if it involved the possibility of breaking bones, he was interested in that activity. You know, I mean, he did everything. He jumped out of planes. He was a professional skateboarder. Every bone in his body had been broken multiple times. He was just that kind of a guy. And so I come in here, and he's walking around. He says, "You the pastor here?" And I said, "That's one of the things people have called me." And he said, I'm looking at your pictures. And he had a camera with him, and he was going around taking pictures of our sacred artwork here. And he says, I'm looking at the artwork in your church here. And he says, who are you people? What do you believe? He said, because it looks like you got some of everybody here. And I said, bottom line for us is that, you know, that there's one God in and through all people and traditions, and love is a better way to be in the world. That's basically it. And he's like, dude, cool. I was like, yeah. And so I just think, you know, I think Science of Mind actually is still ahead of the curve in this, I believe. You know, that eventually we will recognize that there are many paths up the mountain. And the important thing is that people find a path that helps them be a better person and helps them live a more loving, compassionate, kind, productive life. Certainly, when you first get on a path, you know, at the bottom of the mountain, you're certain you have the right path, right? Because after all, you're on the path. You wouldn't be on the wrong path. You're on the path. So this must be the right path. But you know, mystical traditions teach us, mystical traditions from lots of places around the globe teach us that as you move up the mountain, all of those different paths that were at the bottom all start to come together at the top of the mountain. You know, so I cannot believe in my heart of hearts that Buddha sits at the top of the mountain and Krishna sits at the top of the mountain, and one of them goes, well, you know, really, I was more right than you. I don't think so. I think that, you know, the light has come into the world at different times, in different places, for different groups of people to be woken up. And so that doesn't make any of the other ways that the light comes into the world wrong or less than. The important thing is that the light keeps coming into the world to wake us up. And so are we awake yet? I think we are. And I think that's what this whole season reminds us of. On Saturday night, we'll have our candle lighting services where we tell the story of the birth of Jesus. We use the Bible and some other texts, some lesser-known texts, and we tell the story and we sing Christmas carols. But the way the calendar works this year, we're also going to light the menorah, and we're going to talk about that tradition as well. So if you don't have plans to celebrate either of those things, you could do two birds with one stone here. You could come and celebrate both those things with us at 6 and 8 on Saturday night, and I hope you will be here because I think it's just I think it's a spectacular evening. It's very sacred and beautiful and pithy and all those good things. So let's pray. So we turn our attention inward now, recognizing that right here where we are, God is. That we are surrounded and filled with an infinite loving presence, the presence of Spirit. The presence that creates life out of itself. That presence that is the light within each and every one of us. And so as we come together in consciousness, I speak this word for us that yes, absolutely, we are a light unto the world, as is everyone else. And I know it's our job to recognize it about ourselves and also to be willing to see it in other people, as different as they may be. So we include in our prayer today our family members, our friends and loved ones, and we know that right where they are, the fullness and allness of God is present right there. We let our prayer be a blessing in the world, especially to all those situations that seem like darkness. We bring our consciousness, our awareness, our consciousness of love to those situations, and we say God is present even in the midst of that. God is present as perfect outcome, as right activity, as all needs met, as peace, as divine right solutions. We bless our church. We bless all churches everywhere. Synagogues and temples and mosques and ashrams, all paths to God. Because I know on the unseen side of life, we are all connected. We are all one in the mind and heart of God. And so we are blessed by being together. That I claim for us today that we all get raised up. That everybody gets to be lifted. Everybody gets to be healed. Everybody's heart gets to be opened and filled. And so with a full heart, I just give thanks that this is so. I release this word. I know it's done, and so it is. Together we all say, Amen.